What's going on, everybody? Bryan here, and today I've got another episode of What Would Bryan Do? The first question of the day comes from the Anaconda. He wants to know what I would have done in the Casey Anthony trial. He wants to know if she should have been set free, given the death penalty, or sentenced to life in prison. I did follow that case somewhat, as far as I did read some news articles about it and read a few updates about the trial as it was going on. But unlike some people, I did not sit in front of the TV every single day and watch it live on court TV because I have a job and a life. That being aside, let's take a look at a few basic details of the case. Now, obviously, Kaylee Anthony either died accidentally or was murdered, and her body was left to rot and decompose in the woods for about 30 days before it was finally discovered. Now, based on all the news articles and stories I read as the case was going on, in my opinion, much of the evidence that was presented does point to the fact that Kaylee was murdered by her mother, even though much of that evidence was circumstantial. The only reason they weren't able to determine the exact cause of that child's death was because it was left in the woods to decompose for 30 days, thereby destroying all the evidence. Now, like I said, you look at several different things that came up over the course of this trial. Someone did searches for the words chloroform and also information as far as, basically burying and disposing of a body on the family's home computer. Now, the mother said during the trial that she was the one that did those searches, that she was trying to look up the word chlorophyll, and I guess through the natural search progression of her looking for information, it transitioned her to the word chloroform, which she did read about, I guess because she said she was looking for more information. Except for the fact that she was at work when those searches were time-stamped on the home computer. She was clocked in at work, so obviously, in my opinion, she lied about that. And you also look at the fact that Casey was out partying, clubbing, and hanging out with her friends while her child was supposedly missing. Now, in my opinion, you do not act like that unless you know what happened to your child. How can you possibly not be looking for it and be emotionally distraught by the fact your child is missing unless you knew what happened to her? Now, I do know that the defense tried to explain away some of Casey's actions by saying that she was sexually abused by her father as a child, and thereby she had some kind of emotional and mental disconnection and basically became a compulsive liar. Now, even if you want to believe the death of Kaylee Anthony was an accident, that she drowned in the family pool, as the defense tried to say, I just really can't bring myself to believe that any mental or emotional disconnection would lead you to not reporting the accidental death to the authorities and just throwing your daughter's body in the woods like a piece of garbage to be disposed of and left to rot with animals. And it really just is beyond words. So let's take a look at some of the charges in the case, because we all know that she has been released already. Now, count 1 in the case was first-degree murder, which would basically mean she premeditated and planned Kaylee's murder and then acted that murder out. And also the lesser count of count 1 was included, which was second-degree murder, which the definition of that is depraved mind murder, not premeditated, which, some people, I guess, have been sentenced of, murdering someone in a fit of rage or some other emotional condition, not in the right frame of mind. And count 2 was aggravated child abuse, and count 3 was aggravated manslaughter of a child, which is defined as Kaylee would have been guilty by culpable negligence in her child's death. And then we have counts 4 through 7, which were giving false information to a law enforcement officer in reference to a missing person, which were the 3 charges that she was found guilty of. And each of those sentences carries a 1-year prison term, which she was sentenced to time already served because she was in jail for 3 years until this case, came to trial. Now, I do completely understand the letter of the law insofar as it states you need to be found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And with that being said, due to the nature of the case and the fact that they could not determine the exact cause of Kaylee's death due to the fact that her body decomposed for 30 days, thereby destroying all the evidence, If it was my decision to make, if I even did remotely believe that the death of Kaylee was an accident, I definitely would have found her guilty of more of the charges than what the jury did. I would have, without a doubt, convicted her of counts 4 through 7, which was giving false information to a law enforcement officer, each one of those counts carrying a 1-year prison sentence. I also would have found her guilty of count 3, which was aggravated manslaughter of a child, because as that definition is stated, she was responsible for Kaylee's death due to culpable negligence, and I would have sentenced her to the maximum 30 years in prison under that charge. I also would have most likely found her guilty of aggravated child abuse, which would have added another 15 years onto that sentence. Because like I said, following the letter of the law, there wasn't enough evidence there to convict her of first-degree murder, as much as my heart and mind believes that she did it. But I do believe there was enough evidence there to find her guilty of those additional charges and greatly extend her prison sentence. Okay, moving on to the next question. I'm going to butcher this, I think. This is from Mr. Bob Risboxy. He asks, do you think young kids should play M-rated games? I know a lot of people out there believe and will tell you that video games, music, TV shows and whatnot are too violent for children and cause children to become more violent individuals. I personally don't think that's really true. I mean, I look at a game like Modern Warfare 2, I don't see how an M-rated game such as this is going to cause a child to start shooting up a school or pick up guns and start shooting other kids. But then you have other games such as using Grand Theft Auto as an example. I think that can send the wrong message to a young kid. But I really do think that is a decision that each parent needs to make for their own child as far as what they want their kid to be exposed to. In my opinion, there are way too many parents out there that are not involved in their kids' lives whatsoever. Many of them couldn't tell you where their kids are, what they're doing, or who they're with at any given moment because they just don't pay attention, don't care. And then when their kid does something wrong, they look to blame someone else or something else for their kid's bad behavior. They just will not accept the fact that it is their lack of parenting that was to blame from the beginning. And I really do think a lot of these politicians and activist groups and everything else just keep feeding into this scapegoat mentality that this country has fallen into. It really does appear to me that we live in a time where no matter what we say, no matter what we do, no matter what happens to us in life, that it's never our fault. It was never because of something we did or chose to do. It's always to someone else's fault, and someone else or something else is to blame for our lot in life and what we did right or wrong. I mean, it's really gotten to the point where it's just beyond disgusting, in my opinion. And I really do hope that the time comes around again where people are held responsible for their own actions and aren't allowed to explain things away and blame them on someone else all the time. And now that's pretty much all I have for you as we've reached the end of the game. I put up a pretty decent score considering it was derail. I think I went 27-3. And as always, I hope you really enjoyed the video. I will talk to all of you soon, and I hope you have a good one.